Good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Ethan Collier, and I will be chairing today's meeting of the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission. A couple things I want to go over before we get started. Planning Commission received this packet in the mail a little over a week ago, and Planning Commission's had an opportunity to review it in advance of today's meeting. And so at times during our meeting, we move very quickly, so make sure to follow along on the agenda as we move through it. In each case, I'll read off the case number and the agenda number so that you're able to follow along. I'll ask in every case if there's any opposition here. If you're here and you've got questions or concerns, you may not necessarily think of yourself as opposition, but you want to speak in regards to the case, make sure you raise your hand when I ask if there's any opposition here, because sometimes we have a staff recommendation to approve. The applicant obviously wants whatever it is that they're asking for. And I'll ask if there's opposition here. And if you don't raise your hand, then you wouldn't be recognized. In cases where we have opposition or we have a staff recommendation that's different than what the applicant has requested, we'll hear those cases. And normally the way that flows is we'll first give staff the opportunity to present what it is that they've shared with us a couple weeks ago. So we'll first hear the staff report, then we'll hear from the applicant. So I would ask if you're the applicant, come on up to the microphone while we're waiting on staff. And the applicant will have 7 minutes to present their case. And there will be some questions and back and forth between those of us here at the Planning Commission and the applicant. And then the opposition will have a total of 9 minutes. We stick very strictly to that 9-minute time. And so what I would ask is if you're here and you want to speak, make sure to get out of your chair and line up down the right side of the room here so that I can see how many people want to speak. And make sure to keep your comments such that the people behind you can have an opportunity to speak as well. From time to time, I have to interrupt people and ask them to wrap up their comments so that we can make sure to hear from everybody that's here. And then after we've heard from opposition, we'll have 2 minutes to hear from the applicant. So there also are, I think, has already been distributed a list of follow-up dates in regards to these cases. The vast majority of what we do today will be a recommendation to either the county commission or the city council, and you'll want to make sure to follow along those dates if you want to attend those meetings. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I do have a couple quick things before we jump into the agenda. Item 4 on your agenda, which is case SD 24-29. It's a preliminary plat. It's actually been withdrawn from the agenda, and so it will not be heard today. So if you are here and you wanted to speak on that, I'm sorry, it's not going to be heard today because the applicant has withdrawn it. And then under new business, item 3 and 4 on our agenda, which is case 2024-0132 and 2024-0133. These are both located at 1030 or 10330 East Brainerd Road. Both of those cases, the applicant has requested to defer those for 30 days. Do we need to take any action on those?
Yes.
We will.
Yes.
Okay, so when we get to those, we'll take action on those and defer those for 30 days. Is there any opposition for those cases here? You're here in opposition. So we're not going to hear those cases today. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Those cases, the applicant's going to ask for them to be deferred. And most often when the applicant asks to defer it, we do defer it. So just know that that will be the case. And if it gets deferred for 30 days, that means we'll hear it next month. You don't have to, because we probably will not hear from opposition today. If the applicant comes up to the microphone and asks to defer it, there's going to be a motion, and Planning Commission is going to take action to defer it for 30 days. So thank you. With that, Brian, Mr. Schultz, was there anything else I needed to cover?
No, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. First case on our agenda is HCSD-24-11, and this is preliminary plat for Sedman Hills Phase 6. Lots 30, it's 38 lots located at 9310 Smith Cemetery Circle, and staff is recommended to approve this. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda, item 2 on our agenda is HCSD-24-12, and this is a final plat for Harbor Chase, 72 lots located at 7306 Snow Hill Road. Staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant present? Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. All right. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is a final plat. Again, the preliminary plat was approved took about 2 years ago. This final plat is in compliance with the preliminary plat that was approved as part of this development, which is Harbor Chase. It's actually lots 1 through 45 and 78 through 104. There were some things that need to be corrected on the final plat, and they're noted in the staff report, which is typical corrections that need to be shown. This plat, again, will not be signed until all the infrastructure has been in place and all the as-builts have been submitted to the county for acceptance. With that, staff recommends to approve this final plat subject to those corrections and infrastructure being installed.
Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mike Price, MAP Engineers. Defer any comments till hearing from opposition.
Thank you. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that when you come up to the microphone, make sure to state your name and address for the record.
Kim Helton, 8618 Snow Hill Road. First, I wanted to talk about the traffic study and the site distance. The subdivision entrance is located on some Snow Hill Road in a curve with some hilly topography there. The entrance road is very steep. There are questions whether or not it meets the subdivision regulations requirement for a 4% grade for the necessary length of 35 feet. The traffic study, which was commissioned by the developer, says looking right to the north, the intersection site distance is approximately 175 feet, limited by vegetation along Snow Hill Road. Once vegetation is cleared, the intersection site distance should be confirmed. 175 feet is not enough site distance for regular vehicles, not to mention the numerous trucks that will be entering and exiting the subdivision for the construction of the roads and homes. If there isn't enough site distance for vehicles turning left out of the subdivision, why would this be approved? Vegetation on the adjacent property is still there, and the elevation where the entrance road intersects was lowered, and there's a hill there now as well. This elevation change occurred after the traffic study was made, so that site distance could be even less. The traffic study said that a left turn lane into the subdivision would be needed, but does not mention that the site distance will be once the left turn lane is installed. Again, this entrance is located where there is a curve in hilly topography on Snow Hill Road. The preliminary plat report says that the traffic study recommended a left turn lane to be constructed and mentioned concerns if the proper amount of right-of-way can be acquired. Yet there is no mention of that on the final plat, and there has been no change to the amount of property included for this subdivision. There's also no mention of the developer funding the left turn lane. The Hamilton County taxpayers should not have to pay for this or have to relinquish any property for it. An independent traffic study should be completed by the county before this final plat is approved. There's a dangerous road and it does not need added dangers without the proper site distance. The notes on the preliminary plat say approval is subject to the following conditions. Prior to the start of construction, any land disturbance activities should meet the following items. One of those is approval of a Snow Hill Road improvement design. Subdivision regulations say complete infrastructure improvements and submit required as-built and other required information to the appropriate department. This left turn lane has not been installed yet, so why would this be approved? The floodway and the floodplain. This subdivision shows that there are lots of roads and a stormwater pond in the floodplain. The subdivision and zoning regulations both address requirements for floodplain development, and there should be no encroachments allowed on the floodway. The current FEMA map was adopted in 2016. The Meadow Stream subdivision on the other side of Rogers Branch has lots and stormwater ponds in the floodplain, and fill was placed there after these FEMA maps were adopted. Those lots received letters of map revision. But FEMA has completed a new study now and new maps that should be adopted by the Hamilton County in the near future. The new maps show a larger floodplain and the floodway has also changed. Plus, there is a 500-year flood line on this property that was not on the current map. It appears that some of the lots and possibly part of the stormwater pond could be in the floodway on this new FEMA map. And you have a copy of that. On the new FEMA map, under the effective date, it says preliminary issue date, June 28th, 2023. There's a tree line on both maps, so you can see the difference in the amount of floodplain on the property now, and the striped area is the floodway. So the floodway comes up on some of the lots and close to, if not possibly over, a little portion of the stormwater pond. And the floodway is not supposed to be disturbed unless it is certified that there will be no rise in floodwaters. So homes and stormwater ponds should not be constructed in a floodway. Also, you can see on the new map that the base flood for this property has increased. While the maps do not show an apple-to-apple comparison for base flood elevations, one section of the property is from 705 to 706 feet base flood. Within that portion of the property now, it's up to 706.3 feet, and it goes higher, even going south. There is a comparison, that's an apple-to-apple comparison on the adjacent property right next to it, and it went from 707 to 707.6 feet. So it has increased. The base flood elevation has increased. The floodplain was filled on the other side of Rogers Branch and Meadow Stream. And now if this is filled in as well, it could constrict the water flow through that area, which could increase velocities, and that could be a dangerous situation. And Hampton Creek, which is to the north of that, right next to that subdivision, has experienced flooding on some of the roads. One road is not passable by residents. They can't get to and from their homes, and I've been told that there could have been some flooding issues in some homes as well. So there are flooding issues in this area already. So this needs to be looked at, and these new FEMA maps should not be ignored. This is what the study said it is now, currently. So, this shouldn't be ignored. And these should be reflected on the final plat. These new elevations, the new floodway area, the new floodplain area, it should be reflected on this map, on this final plat. The subdivision roads require that the only road in a floodplain area to and from the homes be above the base flood elevations. So it needs to be guaranteed that that road is above base flood elevations, as well as the stormwater pond. Is the stormwater pond above the new base flood elevations? The next issue is the natural gas transmission pipeline. A natural gas transmission pipeline runs
Ma'am,
through this property.
There's a gentleman that is behind you that I think might want to speak as well, and there's only 3 minutes remaining.
Okay, he said to take another minute. The natural gas pipeline runs through this property. The preliminary plat approval note said that prior to the start of construction and any land disturbance activities, that the gas line easement crossbeam permit must be acquired from the gas company. Did they receive this permit? If not, the final plat should not be approved. But there is another safety concern with the design and lots. The roads in the subdivision create a cul-de-sac situation where the only means of ingress and egress for homes is over the natural gas pipeline. The United States Department of Transportation says a new development cul-de-sac street should not be designed. Crossing a transmission pipeline is the only route of ingress and egress. You have a copy of that next to the plat, which shows a natural gas pipeline, which the only way in and out for those homes is over the natural gas pipeline. This is only the first phase, and so there'll be even more homes and more residents that will be their only egress and ingress. And the safety of the residents should come first. The U.S. Department of Transportation guidelines should not be ignored. And this also received a TDEC violation because the infrastructure for the stormwater ponds was in place, and the Hamilton County Water Quality Department rules say they must be in place for the final plat to be approved. So were those installed already is another question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate what you all do. My name is Wayne Rich. I live north of this proposed subdivision off the Snow Hill Road. My concern is the entranceway. For example, as you know, when you go off Snow Hill, you see Sweetbriar. They have an entranceway leading in. A pull-off is 250 feet. As you exit and continue north, it's 150 feet. That should at least be the minimum. On this particular property, is the way it's situated, as the young lady said before, that's a concern, that we just don't have a cutout. D.R. Horton's thumbing their nose at you, Mr. Lehman. You know, that second entrance, they're not having any pull-offs or egress on. They just did a straight cut, curb cut. And you need to watch that because there's homes almost real close to the county right-of-way line. They couldn't give me the distances or tell me how many homes, but that's a huge subdivision. This subdivision is north of there. It's there's a short tail road comes into Snow Hill, and this subdivision is right north of that. So when people turn off here and they're coming here, there needs to be a turnoff lane there to allow them to enter this rather than just a straight cut. Same thing when they leave. Third lane would be preferable. Always use Seven Lakes development on Snow Hill, Etowah, Georgetown Road as a template. That was done right. James Creek, the third lane wasn't done right, as you've seen there on the Etowah, Georgetown Road before you get to Mountain Creek where the circle is. I mean, it doesn't have a base on it. You come south of that at speed limit, particularly in a dump truck, and there's any ice there, accident waiting to happen. So if they are required to put a third lane in, just have standards where they have to do it right. My limited engineering experience with Combat Marines, we did a lot of vertical construction. You got to have a good base. And it doesn't have that. So gentlemen, I'm just pleading to you on the safety concerns of Snow Hill. Now's the time to make those improvements that we can make to alleviate further accidents. Thank you very much for your time. My dad's proudest service was with the Planning Commission back home. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Price?
Thank you. So let me address some of the comments. First off, the FEMA maps are not currently been adopted. They are in the process of being amended. When the process goes through, the county will send information to the engineer and to FEMA as it relates to areas where they think that the study is not reflective of work that maybe have transpired since the study is done. I assume the county did that as it relates to the work both along Meadow Stream and as it relates to this development, which means that's the reason these maps have not been published yet. Even though they may have a preliminary date, oftentimes those will wane a year or even 2 years past. So we are in compliance as it relates to FEMA and as it relates to the elevations that we filled and showed the work to occur on property. As it relates to the gas main, it is not a cul-de-sac situation as it crosses twice, it loops. The likelihood of the gas main explosion, if you will, that would block both entrances and therefore block people behind the gas main is not realistic, therefore. So it's not a situation where it's like a dead-end cul-de-sac road. Instead, it just loops over the gas main. Thirdly, as it relates to the entrance at this particular location, we've already worked this through with Hamilton County Engineering. There will not be turn lanes installed as part of this development. We did not have the right of way, so it was approved without turn lanes. I would agree that the site distance as it relates to the north is an issue, and that's supposedly having a tree, which we had worked out to have removed to create the proper site distance to the north. To the south, you have proper site distance. So given all of that, it meets the requirements as it relates to the final plat. And with that, I would like to ask the Planning Commission for approval. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Any questions? Mr. O'Meara?
Yeah. So just to reiterate on the FEMA maps, those are preliminary maps. They're supposed to be, my understanding is they're supposed to be adopted in the spring. We'd heard this fall, but last I heard was the spring. Let me ask a question about the tree, because you mentioned the tree and you acknowledged the tree. Who's working on the tree? And then I'll jump to the roadway.
The developer has been working on that and should have that addressed
Okay.
when the time comes before this development is paved.
And then let me look back out over our notes, because I do know, and to everybody's point, there's a development that's happening here that has some requirements for roadway improvements. There's one happening just south of here. And then we've got a Snow Hill Road or Short Tail Springs intersection improvement. So I know that we've been working to try to coordinate with improvements that are happening at this development, improvements that are happening at the southern development, and then trying to fill in the middle relative to a left turn appropriate intersection at Short Tail Springs. So I know those plans have been developed, and obviously you'll start, I guess, construction once you have preliminary plat. Have all of your design drawings been approved as
They-
part of this?
They have been, yes.
Okay. And so let me just reiterate, I believe we're working with your developer relative to the roadway improvement. Is that
That is-
true?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. Because that's my understanding. So I just want to make sure, I want to make sure that that's at least discussed. So we'll follow up on that. That's all I've got right now. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, staff did not receive any comments from the fire department or Hamilton County Engineering in need of changes. They agreed the plat as shown meets the requirements for approval.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next case on our agenda, item 3 is SDP-24-28. And this is preliminary plat for Ryle Branch. It's 33 lots located at 8454 Chambers Road. Staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 has been withdrawn. First item under old business is case 2024-0069. And this is located at 5575 Cassandra Smith Road. It's application rezone from R1 to R3. Staff is recommended to deny the applicant's request and approve other. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, staff did receive some emails in opposition as well as letters in opposition. You should have those in front of you in your Google Sheet on their comments.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz.
Yes, this case has been deferred for a couple months. This is a request to rezone from R1 to R3 for a proposed use of a cell tower. It's in Hickson off Cassandra Smith Road. The size of the property is 3.94 acres in size. You see on the zoning map, you have C2 to the north, which is a shopping center. To the south is residential, which is R1. To the east is R1 and RTZ. And the west is R1 and R3. There's been no zoning history on this particular piece of property. However, to the north, that C2 was rezoned from O1 to C2 in 2006. Then to the west, this property along Templeton Lane or Templeton Drive, that was received for a special permit for a PUD. This property is along at 5755 Cassandra Smith Road. It's about 1,000 feet to the south of Hickson Pike. You can see the commercial shopping center to the north, which is a Publix. And then this particular piece of property is used as a church. To the east, across Cassandra Smith, a single unit residential. To the south, a single unit. And to the west, immediately abutting this property is a golf course. And if you go further west, you do run into some single unit attached. There is some floodplain associated with this property, which is the brighter blue color that you see on the screen. The darker blue is a 500-year. Here's a view of the site from Cassandra Smith. Another view of the site. The cell tower proposed location is behind that structure. It's looking north of the site towards Hickson Pike. South of the site. East of the site, which is single unit residential. This property is located in Hickson North River Plan, which is adopted in 2005. The plan recommendation is low density residential, which is detached single units being the dominant use that you'd find in this land use category. Here's a closer view of what the place or plan recommendation is against low density residential. I'll skip through the site plans that were submitted. The request to rezone this entire site is not compatible with the adopted Hickson North River Plan, again, which recommends low density, single family. Staff recommended to deny the applicant's request to rezone the entire site to R3, but instead rezone only the portion of the site needed for the cell tower. So staff recommends to deny the applicant's request and approve R3 residential zone for the portion of the cell tower leased area as shown on the attached map. This is the staff recommendation. So see, instead of rezoning the entire site, staff is recommending to rezone only that area needed for the cell tower, because cell towers are not allowed in R1 unless they're on public property. So this is on private property, therefore they need to rezone to R3. So that's why staff's recommended to deny, but only approve a portion of it for the cell tower.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good afternoon, Hannah Claire Bogus of Chambliss, Bonner and Stoffel on behalf of Tower Co, the applicant. As Brian went over, the purpose of the rezoning is to allow for a new cell tower in the Hickson area on the property owned by Living Faith Church. We have Pastor Michael Linden here today on behalf of the church. Just a little bit of background. This is a national cell tower owner and operator. So before they selected this specific site, they and their service providers identified a coverage gap in the Hickson area and selected sort of a larger area where they could review some proposed tower locations. And the Living Faith Church property was the final selection. Living Faith Church has owned the property since 2012, and prior to their ownership, another church owned the property beginning in 1997. As Brian touched on, the existing zoning ordinance doesn't allow for cell towers in R1 unless the property is publicly owned. As I'm sure the commission is aware, this is the first step to allow for a cell tower. After this, we have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special permit. The proposed site will strengthen cell tower service in the surrounding area, and the additional benefit of this site is that we can take advantage of the existing tree line as a landscape buffer, both by allowing the tower location to be primarily in the northwestern portion of the property so that it's buffering the commercial piece, and that it takes advantage of the tree line at the southwestern portion, so we won't have to disturb those trees. We have been in touch with Councilman Smith, whose district this falls in, as well as the surrounding neighborhood associations. We understand that there is some opposition, and so I will reserve my remaining time to respond to those comments unless the commission has a question at this point.
I do have one question in regards to the staff recommendations and only a portion of the site being recommended for approval for the zoning change. Are you amenable to that?
We're amenable to that. We would like to request the ability to work with RPA prior to this going to City Council so that we can finalize the tower location and just make sure that the exact tower location is within the rezoning area. But we're fine with the concept.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we'll hear from you. If you're here in opposition and you wish to speak on this case, please do line up on the right side of the room. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Bruce Lucier. I reside at 290 Templeton Lane, Hickson. Presently the board chairman for Bent Creek Golf Villas Homeowners Association and Hickson community member. Today I'm representing the concerned citizens of over 200 households in the Amber Brook, Bent Creek, Heritage Ridge, and Valley Brook communities regarding the opposition of the location of a cell tower at the Living Faith Church property. These citizens, when deciding to make their neighborhood home for their families, chose the Cassandra Smith Road area because of quality of life, property values, and convenience to the basic needs. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the members of our community that are present today. If they would raise their hands and be recognized. Thank you. Members of the commission, thank you for allowing us to take time to address our concerns regarding case number 2024-069. Concerned members, we will begin by stating our most serious concerns regarding this proposal. Concern number one, the long-term effects on health and safety. We are aware that there is no strong evidence that radio frequency from cell towers causes noticeable health effects. However, it's essential to recognize that this doesn't prove absolute safety either. 5G has only been in existence since 2019. And so that's a very short period of time to do studies to determine long-range effects. 5G radiation is under scrutiny today by many of the health organizations, including the World Health Organization. Studies are being done to determine if the radiation emitted by 5G towers is harmful or not. Physicians have expressed concerns, citing health risks, including cancer, cellular stress, genetic damage, reproductive changes, and neurological disorders. I don't know if any of those speak quality of life to you. They don't to us. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, has classified radio frequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans. Further research is required to determine the long-term effects of 5G. We understand that piece, and we want you to understand that as well. In essence, we are dealing with the unknown long-term impact to the health and safety of the residents living in this community. It may affect the quality of life for these families as well. Concern number 2, property value impact. An unsightly 200-foot cell tower in the middle of a residential area and next to a popular golf course not only impacts the beauty and serenity of the Cassandra Smith Road community, but will also ultimately lower the property values due to its unsightliness and the growing fear of radiation exposure to children and families. Concern number 3, spot zoning precedents. In many states, spot zoning, like the zoning proposed in this case, is illegal or restricted due to future incompatible use of the property. A cell tower on this property would limit future development opportunities for this property, and this would also set a precedence for additional spot zoning across the county. In conclusion, the current site in question, Living Faith Church, is a simple and quick solution for tower code. We believe that they should be required to exhaust all other possible options by identifying suitable alternative locations for the tower location that does not impact residential areas. We believe the benefits of the proposed cell tower are negligible when concerning the quality of life of our citizens and our community. We also believe that cell tower installations should not be allowed in residential areas. Cell tower installations should only be allowed in commercial and industrial areas, and we strongly propose establishing an ordinance to uphold this. We would like to offer some alternative sites for the cell tower location that are not located in a high density populated area. There's been dialogue between the reps for these properties by members of our community, and all are open to the placement of a cell tower on their property. These include Creeks Bend Golf Club, owner Buddy Templeton. It's a non-residential area. That would be at the proximity to hole number 1. Hickson Serenity Club at Middle Valley Road. Representative was Darrell Brock. This is also a non-residential area. Clear Creek Church of Christ, Food City area. Dixon Pike, the representative was Clay Parker. This is also a non-residential area. These are all 3,000 plus feet from Living Faith Church. The citizens of our community, thank you for your time and consideration regarding our concerns to the proposed location of the aforementioned cell tower in our community. We strongly encourage each and every one of you on the Planning Commission to err on the side of caution when deciding on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
So I will address the comments made in the order given. First, I certainly agree with the gentleman that the scientific evidence doesn't provide any support for the position that emissions affect health. In addition, as the commission may be aware, the Federal Communication Commission has exclusive jurisdiction over determining or regulating the placement of towers based on these environmental or health concerns. Second, given the proposed location of the tower, I would proffer that the impact on property values is negligible. We're not proposing putting the tower up against the existing residential homes. The proposed location is first behind the existing church structure and on the portion of the property that is closer to the commercial development. Third, spot zoning is legal in the state of Tennessee, and this type of rezoning doesn't fall under the definition of spot zoning because we're not changing the use of the property. The use of the property is remaining a church. We are simply rezoning to allow the accessory use of a tower location on the property. And finally, although I cannot speak to all of the proposed alternative locations mentioned, some of those locations, either Tower Co. looked at them and considered them as alternatives, or determined that they could not be alternatives because of another tower in the area that's under a competing service provider. And so the FCC regulates how close you can have towers together. And so some of those locations are in the tower area that the site could not fit within. I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
That weren't available or that would be precluded because of some proximity of the to other towers, but there are other properties that you have considered that don't or aren't precluded because of that.
That's right. And the Tower Co. engaged in initial conversations with, again, I can't speak to all of the ones mentioned by the gentleman, but some of those, and they either weren't interested in a tower or the business terms, what was offered wasn't acceptable to them. And so the Living Faith Church was the final selection.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably best asked to staff and maybe the applicant, but what on the special permit that they would have to get after this, is there requirements on how it's designed and site layout in terms of proximity to the neighboring property?
I don't think it gets into all that details, but it does have landscaping requirements that go from the Board of Appeals. There's certain other requirements to get that special permit. I don't think it gets into design per se, but they will review that permit.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the pastors here. I'm just curious, what kind of a relationship exists right now with the church and the community? I guess maybe this should go to the pastor, but do most of your congregants live in this area? Or are they driving in from other places? I'm just curious about that. I know he's not up to speak, but I sure like to hear. I'd like to hear from the pastor. Ooh.
Thank you very much. I do pastor Living Faith Church located in Hickson, Tennessee. And to respond to your question, sir, our relationship with the community is upstanding and excellent. That's how I would respond to your question.
Mr. Chairman, can we, just for the record, get the pastor's name and address? I may have missed
Yes,
that.
please.
Yes, my name is Michael Linden, and my home address is 8533 Kinsley Lane, Hickson, Tennessee, 37343.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to hear, if we can, from the community. I mean, the pastor that lives adjacent to a couple of single family homes wants to build a tower structure wants to contract to build this tower structure next to the single family homes. And I would think our due diligence is to hear from the community about what conversation they've had with the church. I think that would be an important piece for us. If they've had conversation either with the church, Pastor Linden, or the cell phone tower company. We've got several representatives here. I think that we probably owe that.
If I may respond to that as well. We have been in touch with all 3 neighborhood associations. We did offer to meet with each of them. The presidents of those associations communicated the concerns on behalf of their residents and stated that they didn't think a meeting would be beneficial either for us or for the residents. That's sort of, and I don't believe the church has initiated communications with respect to this. They have allowed us and our client to sort of handle most of those conversations. But of course, I'm happy to have any opposition speak to that as well.
And thank you. Thanks for responding. I do think it's incumbent on either the church or your company, or as a representative of that company, that you try to engage in a conversation where I'm getting lots of head nods, no formal conversation that hasn't happened. And I think that's what this body likes to see.
And we're of course happy to have any meeting. We can speak with any opposition after about the meeting before this heads to City Council in September.
Mr. Lau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. The 190 feet tower, as it's depicted in the drawing, is that a tall tower, or is that an average size tower or a short tower? I don't know much about cell phone towers.
Yeah, so in my experience, 190 to a little over 200 is pretty normal. Cell tower technology over the last 15 years has come a very long way, where you can design taller towers that have fall zones where they fall into themselves. And so you don't have to worry about a storm or a casualty event causing the entire tower to fall in one direction, which was the concern with older towers. So now you are seeing taller towers that have an engineering design which allow them to collapse in, reducing the fall radius.
I was more so concerned about the fact that they're very unsightly, and whether 190 feet, again, I don't know much about them, but it feels like, is there the ability to bring them down, or, but that's kind of where I was going with that.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, can I request that the opposition respond to the community engagement piece?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we had a representative there.
And I'm Bruce Lucier, board chairman for the Bent Creek HOA. I personally, have not been engaged in trying to set up meetings with the church and the lawyer for TowerCo. Our president, unfortunately, could not be here today. He has COVID. Our president of Heritage Ridge HOA is on business with his job, couldn't be here today. So, but I do know that they have shared their information with me. We have tried to make contact with the church on several occasions. I've been told the pastor has not returned phone calls. We did speak to the lawyer, and excuse me, I don't remember your name, but we have spoken with the lawyer. She called our president, Charlie Hunt, last week and told him that she was not interested. Her client was satisfied with the Life Church site. He was not interested in speaking with us. So we've had no direct contact here since it was postponed a month ago, to my knowledge, with either or. We have made some, earlier on, excuse me, I think we had some contact with the pastor at the church, but it was minimal. But I would disagree with two things. One, that we have a great relationship with the church. I think we have no relationship with the church. I am aware that several people in our community have had to call law enforcement because of loud noise, music being played later at night. We are a community of older Americans, and most retired in our development. Our patterns, our daily lifestyle might be a little bit different than the teenagers and the young adults that like to be out a little bit later at night once it turns dark. But again, everything that I am aware of as far as relationship between our communities and the church is not as glorious as they make it sound in there. One other thing, as far as the 190 tower, there will be multiple companies that will use that tower. They'll rent space on that tower. They will be putting out more than just what the FEC or all these different acronyms would say. So we're going to start adding those things up again. And if you go and you do the research, most of the World Health Organizations, the safety measure within a cell tower base station range is 400 feet, somewhere around there. Obviously, every medical doctor will tell you further away you are from a cell tower and these magnetic waves, then the safer it becomes. But for us, we're there 24/7, 365. That's our home. That's our area. It's not something we go to once or twice a week and then we can drive back home out of that area. And so to me, it becomes very important to understand as we look at it. Again, unsightly, I've heard that mentioned. I also know that most cell towers or most towers that I see have lights on them.
Sir,
Yes, sir. I understand. I just want to make that point. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your concerns, and thank you for a second go around up here.
thank you. Pastor, if you'd like to come back up and say something, I'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. I would like to respond as it pertains to the reputation of our congregation and the relationship that we've offered, particularly and specifically in regards to the neighborhood right behind us where the cell phone tower would be positioned. Any phone call that has been offered to our congregation, I've done my due diligence to respond. There was a contact made from one of the residents from that neighborhood, and I communicated our motivation to even entertain this opportunity. It was for the financial peace of the congregation. We have been challenged financially as a congregation to pay the monthly payment, the mortgage. And that was the only reason when we received this phone call from TowerCo that we entertained the proposition or the opportunity rather to even have a conversation about establishing a cell phone tower. My relationship with the community is of the utmost importance. We've established relationship with Hickson Middle School, which is a public school system or in the public school system. And we have a Bible study every Friday morning in the Hickson Middle School. We have various outreaches throughout the community. And so my relationship with the neighborhood behind the congregation, behind the church, my relationship with the neighborhood in front of the church is of the utmost importance. And I just wanted to respond for our reputation. I know there's people in the audience today, and if they were to ever think about our church, I do not want there to be any improper filter as it pertains to our congregation. As it pertains to the opportunity that was presented to us, our only motivation to entertain the conversation was for the financial piece of the congregation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to approve the staff recommendation with the condition that the specific location must be worked out between RPA staff and the applicant prior to the city council meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Starting on my right.
No.
No.
Yes.
I wasn't counting.
I failed 4 to 6.
Okay. Well, it didn't take a whole lot of math to figure that out, Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Um,
Public education.
I think it was 4 to 6.
4 to 6. Okay. Got pretty fast on the end there. I couldn't keep up.
I'll entertain a different motion. Or the same one if you want to make the same motion. We have a motion to deny and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. I just want to say on the record that I did not vote in that case. Last time this body took action on a Verizon tower, my cell phone quit working all across Chattanooga. I kid you not, it did not work we had to move offices because I could not any longer use my cell phone from my office. I'm just on the record saying I did not vote Verizon because I have Verizon. All right. Next case on the agenda is case 2024-0110, and this is located at 3406 Ottawa Ringgold Road. And this is a special permit for residential plan unit development. Staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition? Okay. Yes. Is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz?
I'll make sure this opposition is for the right case. Oh, sorry, it is. Sorry.
I think so.
This case was before us last month. There was 2 cases actually last month. One was to rezone the property from A1 to R1. That was approved by the Planning Commission. We'll go in front of the County Commission in 2 weeks. This is the second part of it, which is for a PUD, and it was actually deferred from last month due to some issues with the site plan, and the applicant brought, I think, revised conditions to the Planning Commission. So that's what this is back in front of you. Again, this is a special permit for a residential plan unit development. It's roughly 28.1 acres in size. Proposed units is 44. That's a density of 1.56. Again, it's not a rezoning. The rezoning already was approved last month at the Planning Commission. There's several PUDs nearby. Looking to the south, 3132 Ottawa Ringgold Road received a PUD in 2020. So we got one to the south. There's also one to the northeast or northwest that was approved as a PUD as well. So there's precedence in this area for PUDs. Here's a view of the property. To the north is single unit residential. To the south is single unit residential and vacant land. And to the west across Ottawa Ringgold Road is single unit residential. Here's a view of the site. This is a view north of the site, east of the site, south of the site. This is west of the site. This property is located in a White Oak Mountain Area Plan, which is adopted in 2022. The place type recommendation is suburban residential, with the primary uses being single unit detached housing, which is what's proposed by the developer in this PUD. Has a density of anywhere between 2 to 5 dwelling units per acre. Here's a closer view of that place type recommendation, which again is suburban residential. Here's a view of the site plan or PUD plan that was submitted with the application against 44 lots. One entrance off Ottawa Ringgold Road with a private road serving 4 lots in the back, and the green hashed area is due to topography that will not be developed on. It shows 2 areas for detention ponds. This revised site plan is submitted to staff, meets the requirements. So staff recommended to approve with 2 conditions: a type C landscape buffer provided around the perimeter boundary of the development. So around the perimeter of the PUD, a type C, which is 10-foot landscape buffer, should be provided. Then a private road that's shown on the site plan that is located between lots 23 and 30 that extends over lots 24 to 28 must have a turnaround that meets the International Fire Code and be constructed in compliance with all other road requirements in the International Fire Code. So basically, at the end of this private road where it dead ends, they have to do a cul-de-sac, meeting International Fire Codes. So staff recommends approve with those two conditions.
Mr. Schultz, why the second condition? That's unusual that we'd see conditions referencing how the roads are built. I'm just curious if there's some nuanced reason as to why that wouldn't just be covered under our subdivision regulations.
It will. Typically, we can put those as notes as well. We felt it's more important at this time to put it as a condition. I don't know, Todd.
Chairman, I'll respond a little bit. If you look at the plat, the public road subdivision regulation road will end at that sort of hammerhead cul-de-sac. And the proposal from the applicant and the property owners to extend a road into it's actually going to be a private drive to extend to those other properties that are in the back half. So that does not fall under the subdivision regulations. And so the one requirement to make sure that the fire marshal will review and approve this plat, because they do sign it, would be that road would carry fire protection. Would be able to be accessed by the,
Sure.
by the volunteer fire. So it's kind of a unique,
landlocked.
because it's a unique situation, the reason for the condition.
That's great. Thank you. Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mike Price, MAP Engineers. So the request is, I think, pretty straightforward as it relates to the development with a single cul-de-sac road. The private road in the back, the language, Brian, if you pull that up, I think can be truncated. One of the things that they teach you in engineering school, among other things, is the word all is a word to avoid. Okay. You can achieve the same thing without the word all. And if it comes to the International Fire Code, which is some 1,000 pages, all is a word I don't really want to try to tackle. But I think we can come to a language that fits, which is basically that the road will meet the International Fire Code requirements and or the fire marshal. That would be fine for number 2. As it relates to number 1, we don't propose a type C buffer. I don't believe that I remember seeing. We do propose a landscape buffer, and it's not along the entire perimeter of the property. So that should be changed to meet the landscaping as shown on the attached site plan, because there's no reason to extend the landscape buffer all the way around the perimeter areas, especially when we're not developing. We basically chose the areas on the southern side where we put lots, and on the northern side where we didn't have a stream buffer, where we were developing single family homes. Beyond that, the rest of those are large lots and don't need landscaping, especially on top of the mountain where there's hundreds of trees there already. So I think if we were to amend those 2 conditions, we think that this plan certainly is in compliance. The density is low, and we think that this is a good use for the property. If there's any questions, happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Price? All right. There's a gentleman here in opposition. If you'd like to speak, now's the time. Make sure to state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Rob Stover. I live at 2408 Oodwall Ringgold Road. And the back part of my property's right against it. But there's a flood zone in that back area and where the Oodwall Creek is. And I'm worried about drainage. And just want to make sure that gets addressed so that my lot's not flooded because it does flood when it rains and there's a lot of water there. So I just want to make sure that that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Price.
So there is a creek that runs to the property. That is the darker green area with the center area being in a light blue. So that reflects the stream buffer requirements that state and county have. And certainly we will put in the stormwater detention facilities to address stormwater runoff so as to not increase runoff onto our neighbors. So county will review that as well as, of course, the plans that we prepare. So I think the net result would be is you should not see any differences as it relates to runoff.
Thank you, Mr. Price. In regards to the staff recommendation on number 1, I think Planning Commission understands that you don't like the word all. Thank you for that. On 1, how would you suggest that read?
Landscaping along the perimeter per attached site plan.
What's the will of the commission? And the conditions, are they the staff recommendations or what the applicants requested? Okay, so we have a motion to approve with staff, with applicants' conditions. And that has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Price.
Thank you.
Next case on the agenda, item 3 under old business, is case 2024-0119. And this is located at 1502 East 12th Street. And it's an application to rezone from R1 to UGC. It was deferred from our July meeting and staff has recommended to deny the applicant's request. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? All right. Sir, would you like to come up and say anything? So we deferred this a month ago. And so maybe just remind us of what you're requesting and why.
We're trying to build four affordable housing units. I think we're going to reach that.
Could you state your name and address for the record?
Benjamin Peterson, 416 Cloud Trail.
Elijah Weaver, 1918 South Greenwood Ave, Chattanooga. So ultimately, we want to build 4 townhomes, and we have deed restrictions to make it affordable units. And we asked for UGC thinking that would be the best solution to get that end result. But now with the new zoning, we're looking to make it RN2.
Applicants
Mr.
are
Chairman,
requesting.
Yes, if that is the case, the applicant needs to withdraw this and start over.
Right. If they were going to request any new zone.
Because right now it's zoned, what's it, zone R1?
Yes.
And we're doing equivalency mapping now. This most likely be the RN15, which would allow towns to have to rezone that to a different zone, which this application needs to go away if that's his request, to withdraw this case and start over.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. I've spent a lot of time on this case since I made the motion to defer it a couple of months ago. So there's a lot of paper on this from the previous mayoral administration. This was a part of the Burke administration's affordable housing initiative, and I've reviewed the deed restrictions that you provided the city. Thank you for that. There's a little inconsistency between the number of units in the deed restriction that was placed in 2020 when the property was conveyed from the city to you and what you are proposing for the site now. I will say that what you are proposing for the site now better fits our Kelly administration's affordable housing initiatives. So Brian, I suggested RN2 in our communication based on what they wanted to do. And I'm not sure the proper way to handle it, but obviously we're going through, as you and I know full well, we're going through the equivalency mapping, yes, spending a lot of time on that now. I don't want this applicant to have to withdraw and come back if there's a way to get them to city council and that be considered. I imagine it'll be deferred the first time it gets to city council.
I know somebody else correct me if I'm wrong, because the signs that went up, this is all advertised for UGC.
Okay.
Not the RN2. I think
but council can do whatever they
Yes,
want.
you're correct.
But council can do whatever they want when it gets to them, correct?
after the zones are effective.
Right.
They're not going to be effective until November.
Right, November 20, but they could make it they could make the
I
effective
think
date.
Somebody correct me. I think the cleanest way would be to withdraw, come back in the new application. Yeah, it's the same time.
That's a really good point.
Would they be subject to additional fees if they did that?
No, we'll just switch it out.
Okay.
Ain't that the signs?
So, guys, Brian's right. November 20 is the effective date of the new zoning code that I let you know about last week. So if it went to city council next month, that would be September. It would be 2 months anyway until you could take advantage of the new zone requirements. So hearing that, would you want to withdraw, come back with a new application for the new zones that would take effect in November anyway? It sounds like you'd get a more positive staff report if you did that. And also, so I'll make that motion in just a moment, but I spoke with our chief housing officer this morning, Nicole Heyman. I want to put you in a room with her in the next couple of weeks to talk about how we can convert the restrictions that were placed in 2020 to restrictions that would accommodate our current affordable housing initiative, which would allow you to build the 4 units instead of just 1. So I'll connect you after this. And if you're agreeable to it, I'll make the motion to withdraw. Does that work for you today? Okay, motion to withdraw.
Second. We have a motion and it has been seconded to allow the applicant to withdraw the application. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the sake of conversation, could they not still do it with UGC? And I mean, would that not, what would be the downside other than the fact that the rezone application is like a 5x multiplier over a residential application fee for them to proceed with UGC? I mean, I've done the same thing with, tight infill development using UGC, where we just conditioned the heck out of it to where it was only residential and there were a whole bunch of conditions that we approved. I guess, the housing affordability crisis that our community is facing is one that, every single day matters for cost of construction, cost of rent, cost of money. I'm just wondering, would it not short circuit all of that to just proceed on with UGC and put more conditions on it?
Mr. Anderson.
So we're very aware of the affordable housing crisis we spent a lot of time on, and I couldn't agree with you more that time is of the essence, which is why I've fought every delay of the new zoning code, the new initiatives, everything for the last 3 years. I think that UGC is unlikely to get approval at the city council. And because council has, since the new zoning code has passed, they've expressed a desire to not make anything else UGC. And I think if this went to council as UGC, especially considering that the deed restrictions that are attached to this property as a result of the AHI, you can't build what's on your site plan. So I think that would further doom it from UGC. I agree with Brian. I didn't come here thinking this was the solution, but after hearing staff, I believe that the cleanest and easiest way for you to build 4 affordable units is to withdraw and come back for one of the new zones, probably RN2.
Thank you. See y'all next month.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Next case on our agenda is the first item under new business, and it's a mandatory referral, 2024-0130. This is located in the 3700 block of Valerine Drive, and this is for a sewer easement abandonment, and staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? We do have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. This case is 2024-0131, and this is located at 8248 Stanford Gap Road, and it's a special permit for a home for handicapped and aged, and it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 and 4, is the applicant present? Can you come up to the microphone? This is case 2024-0132. It's located at 10330 East Brainerd Road. You want to defer for 30 days?
Yes, sir.
What's the will of the commission?
Move to defer 30 days.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And in regards to case 2024-0133.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hold on one second. Case 2024-0133, located at 10330 East Brainerd Road. You wish to defer that as well?
Yes, sir. Move to defer 30
We have
days.
a motion to defer that for 30 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you again.
Item 5 on our agenda is case 2024-0134, and this is located at 2414, 2430 Ottawa Ringgold Road, and 9325, 29, 25, and 26 Houston Lane. This is an application to rezone from A1 and R2 to R1, and staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? And is the applicant present? Are you okay with the conditions? Okay. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is,
And while we're at it, can you cover case 2024-0135 as
yes,
well?
the PUD. This case 2024-134, this is the rezoning request to rezone from A1 and R2 to R1. Looking at the zoning map, you have R1 with a PUD to the north, A1 and R5 to the south. To the east is A1, and to the west is R1 and R2 and A1. So it's a mixture of zones, residential zones in this area. Proposed use is single unit residential. It's roughly 78 acres in size. Number of units proposed is 119. That's a density of 1.5 dwelling units per acre. There is no zoning history on this piece of property, but to the north, in 2018, that property was rezoned to R1 for a PUD. Then to the southwest, in 2016, that property was rezoned from A1 and R2 to R1. So it is present in the area for R1 zoning, as you can see on the zoning map. To the north is single unit detached residential and agriculture uses. To the south is single unit detached. And to the west is single unit detached. And the east is vacant property. Here's a view of the site from Houston Lane. Site from Ottawa Ringgold Road. Another view of the site from Ottawa Ringgold Road. Another view of the site from Ottawa Ringgold Road. This is north of the site, which is single unit detached dwellings. This is south of the site on Houston Lane. So this is where the proposed applicant or development will take access from. Here's a view west of the site. This property does have a floodway and floodplain associated with it along the frontage along Ottawa Ringgold Road. You can see on the map here. This property is in the White Oak Mountain Area 12 plan, which was adopted in 2019. The place type recommendation is suburban residential. Primary uses are single unit detached, which is what the developer is proposing. And that's a density of anywhere between 3 to 5 dwelling units. So the density count is in line with the place type. This place type also has a reserve because of the floodway or floodplain associated with the front part of this property. Here's a closer view of the site. You can see again the suburban residential and the green cross hatching is the preserve area because again, due to topography and steep slopes and floodplains that are associated with it. Here's the site plan submitted with a request. To the west is Ottawa Ringgold Road. You see there's no access point. Access to this is off Houston Lane. Houston Lane is right here. These are all existing single family dwellings. It's 199 units, which is less than required for 2 access points. The request is compatible with adopted land use plan. It is compatible with adjacent land uses and development form. Staff recommends a condition requiring the special permit for a residential PUD to ensure compatibility with residential density in the area. The applicant is also required to revise the PUD plan prior to county commission, showing one of the conditions that staff is recommending. So staff recommends 2 conditions, subject to approval of a special permit for a PUD. And condition number 2, provide a street connection to Ottawa Ringgold Road according to Hamilton County Traffic Engineering and Development Services standards. We do have some additional pictures provided by staff this morning. This is Houston Lane, which is like a local road. that we're providing access to these 199 lots. Another view of Houston Lane. Another view of Houston Lane. So that just gives you an example of what Houston Lane appears to look like. So staff again recommends approve with 2 conditions. And then the third or second case is the PUD for this property. Same site, same location. Get to the PUD. Staff recommends to approve. And there's the PUD plan. Again, one entrance off Houston Lane. 199 units, single family detached.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Mr. Lyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, you keep saying 199, but it says 119.
Oh, sorry, 119. Sorry, I said 199. Sorry, 199 in my head.
That's okay.
Thanks for correcting me.
And the other part of my question was, what is the threshold for the second entrance?
It's 200.
Okay.
Mr. Price?
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers. And so I do believe we have a plan here that certainly falls within the land use plan as it relates to density, as it relates to the use of the property. And certainly you can see the green area in the back, which will not be developed, similar to the one that was just recently approved. So one access is all that is required. We do propose to come in off of Houston Lane. This would be very similar in nature with regards to having to improve Houston Lane, just what we had to do on the one on Bell Mill Road recently. So what we would see is improving Houston Lane from our entrance out to Ooltewah Ringgold Road to make sure that it fits the proper county standards as it relates to road widths in through there, especially due to the fact that there'll be increased traffic on that road. We do not agree as it relates to providing access out to Ooltewah Ringgold Road, because there's a creek with a floodway and you also have stream buffers. So what we did is intentionally to stay away from the stream, out of the buffer, out of the floodway, and not get into all of the issues that involves trying to create a creek crossing at that particular location. So we would believe that if we simply go through and improve Houston Lane, that meets the burden and requirement as it relates to emergency vehicles. And again, that we're at 119, 120, call it if you will, versus 200, which is when the second entrance is required. We do not see that a second entrance is necessary, especially given the expense and cost of what that would take to cross over that creek and create another access point on an already numerous curb cuts that occur in this section of Ooltewah Ringgold Road. So we don't think that this is necessary and would be counterproductive as it relates to traffic flow on Ooltewah Ringgold Road. So if there's any questions, happy to answer those.
Mr. Chairman, I want to clarify too, the entrance off Ooltewah Ringgold Road is not meant to be a secondary entrance point because the fire code. I think the county wished to have that connection. It's better to have the connection there than Houston Lane, I think was the thinking. And not necessarily for the fire code, the secondary entrance.
Mr. Lynn?
So, Mr. Price, just 2 questions. And I don't know, but have you talked to TDOT about another driveway permit on Ooltewah Ringgold?
I have not.
Okay.
My guess is that they would probably grant one.
Okay.
But we have not, again, due to the previous reasons that I indicated.
But you did mention, and I'd like to sort of codify that. Maybe we can do that through a condition. We'll see how the rest of the discussion goes. But you did say your developer is willing to improve Houston Lane relative to current access.
Similar to what we did on Bell Mill Road, where we went and widened the road out to meet county standards, created shoulders.
But you would agree out to Ooltewah Ringgold Road? Bell Mill was a little different because I think you did it just inclusive to the frontage. This would be a little different situation.
A little different, but in terms of providing access and it'd be appropriate, that's what it would take. So I would think taking it back out to Ooltewah Ringgold Road would be appropriate.
Okay, so in lieu of crossing the stream and getting a driveway permit from TDOT, which we could check on both of those between now and County Commission, you would agree potentially to a condition to improve Houston Lane?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
From our entrance to Ooltewah Ringgold Road.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I did see one hand here in opposition. If you'd like to speak, come on up. Yeah. Okay.
Sammy Shoemaker, and I'm a resident on Houston Lane. Our street it can't support the traffic that we have on it now. It is a very narrow road, and the pictures show, this is my neighbor. He's right in the S curve. You're looking straight at his house, and you can barely see my house. The county had come in and cut down all of those trees on that bank. Mr. Thompson's house sits right behind that tree line, which it is a very tight S curve. There's about 30 homes or less on this street because it dead ends into White Oak Mountain, where 50 acres of this, I think, was the green area that is shown. So I don't see how that road, how they're going to condition that road to support 119 more homes. And that's what I'm here to oppose, is that they need an entrance off of Udawa-Ringgold Road instead of Houston Lane.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So Houston Lane is a public road and it has a 50-foot right of way, which is more than sufficient for us to be able to make the necessary improvements out to Udawa-Ringo Road. And I would say the times I have traveled Houston Lane, I've yet to have the first car pass when I was driving it. So yes, there'll be far more traffic than what the residents out here have experienced. But if you look at where our location is, most of that traffic as it relates to the individuals he's referring to are past our entrance, where we will not be having our traffic in our subdivision going into. So they'll see more traffic as it relates to getting out, I'm sure, in the morning, as it will stack up there at Houston Lane at Udawa-Ringo Road. But other than that, they really shouldn't see, other than an improved road from our entrance location to Udawa-Ringo Road. So if there's any questions, happy to answer those.
Mr. Lau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the plan for the rest of the property?
You talking about the green portion in the back?
Yes, sir.
That would go and be undeveloped. So the topography in those areas is extremely steep. So we would see that as community space.
So there's no potential for future development on the remaining property?
Only if one were to move about 3 million cubic yards of dirt. So no.
Thanks.
Any other questions for you?
Yes, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Brian, could I see that Houston Road again? Yeah, that right. You're gonna get a fire truck up there and other emergency vehicles up through there?
We can. Once the improvements are made, you can make it today going down that road. But granted, an emergency vehicle today would probably travel into the other lane. But when we make our improvements, that would not be the case.
So when you say improvements, give me an idea what kind of improvements.
So we'd be looking at a minimum of 24-foot wide roads, 12-foot lanes, which is basically, if you look at most interstate lanes, those are 12-foot wide lanes. The county standards then would be like we've done on Bell Mill Road. You have a shoulder, which in some instances on this road, you have a shoulder. It's not like some areas of the county where you have no shoulder. So actually, it's a little bit better than in some conditions that we design. But at the end of the day, it would be very similar to what we've done on Bell Mill Road, which received county approval for a development had far more traffic.
Any other questions?
Mr. Price, is there any chance that you could straighten out that sharp S curve? Do you have enough footage to straighten out that at all?
If there is a willingness of the property owner to dedicate the right of way or sell it at a market rate, because it wouldn't take much, then we would certainly be willing to do that. But again, it's going to take the willingness of a property owner. Some property owners are, many are sort of take the position that it's their land and they don't want to, give up anything, and it's their right, unless the county wants to take eminent domain measures. But if they would, yes,
You would be willing to approach him and the owner and ask for it?
I'll be happy to do that. Yes, sir.
All right. In regards to case 2024-0134, what's the will of the commission? And staff has recommended that it be subject to 2 conditions. And we've had the vast majority of our discussion around one of those on the street connection. What's your intent in regards to that, the staff condition? Okay. Okay. So we have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. Who's counting?
I'll keep count. We go slow.
Okay, I'm not counting.
Aye.
Nay.
6-4.
6 in favor?
6 no and 6 yes, or 4 yes.
Okay, so the motion does not carry. Thank you. I would entertain a different person. Mr. Anderson.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the first condition.
We have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion?
I was going, go ahead.
I would say that we're fine if you wanted to add the second condition, which I'm sure the county engineering department is going to want us to have if we don't do the first, or that condition, that we would at least improve Houston Lane from our entrance back out, which we'd be willing to do so.
I'd like to amend my motion to add the improvement of Houston Lane.
Who was the second on that? Thank you. Any
So-
discussion?
Yes.
So it would be improvements of Houston Lane from the entrance to the PUD or the entirety of Houston Lane? Let's just clarify there.
From Houston Lane, from Uluwal-Ringo Road to our entrance. There's no reason for us to improve anything behind that because we don't affect the traffic in that particular area.
Mr. Chairman, should we clarify that that has to meet county road standards? I think that's,
It's meet standards required by Hamilton County Engineering Department yep.
All right. So we have a motion. Has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In regards to case 2024-0135, we have a staff recommendation to approve. It's the same addresses. What's the will of the commission?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. It has
Second.
been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on our agenda is a mandatory referral, case 2024-0136. And this is part of 14400 block of Burton Road. And it's a mandatory referral for street closure and abandonment. Staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? And are you familiar with these conditions? Okay, come on up.
Mary Allison Ralston, and I live at 6808 Levi Road in Hickson. And could you explain the conditions?
Mr. Schultz.
sure, I'll try my best. Because this road is being abandoned, it's public right of way. We're at dead ends, where it will dead end at your property. According to the subregs, you have to provide a turnaround. And that's what this condition is trying to say, that you would have to provide a 50-foot diameter cul-de-sac for a turnaround must be installed at the end of the public right of way. That's where your gate is, where the right of way would end. You'd be responsible on your end to construct that within the county's right of way. I think the county right of way is 50 foot through there. You'd have to construct that.
Okay, the question I have is, I wanted to propose, instead of the 50-foot diameter cul-de-sac, that we can construct an L-shaped turnaround, which has worked well for the last 30 years as it stands currently at the end of the road. And the reason I don't want a 50-foot cul-de-sac is because I don't want to destroy the natural barriers, which are the high banks and the tree line on each side of the road. So if I could construct the L shape like it is currently at the end of the road, I see no difference, you know, to do that than what it is now.
Mr. Schultz, can you show us where it is on this map?
Sure. Well, here's the site plan. This road comes through here, and then I think she's wanting to close it right here at the start of her property. Let's go back to the pictures that she provided. I believe it's, she can correct me if I'm wrong, right here to this back of this car. It's like a little L.
Yeah, that's
top
the
turnaround.
current turnaround, which is just a little
And where this
L-shaped.
blue truck is as well, right here.
Hey, I'm sorry, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lehman.
This does go county commission.
It will go
correct?
to county commission.
Yeah, what I would recommend and may make the motion that we leave the condition and the recommendation as is, and we can look into it prior to a county commission discussion. And if there's a more appropriate turnaround, I mean, obviously the concern is anytime we have to provide access to public roads because they're for the use of the public. And so in the situation where someone comes up that road, they've got to have an appropriate way to turn around. Also, whether it's other types of emergency response. So understanding if we only have 50 feet and some of the other limitations, but I would be more comfortable leaving the condition and then having that discussion prior to a county commission vote if there's another alternative that works. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, I also wanted to state that at the beginning of the road, there is, you know, the dead end sign and also no turnaround sign, which of course the general public just ignores. And I know that the county personnel and you know, any mail person, VEC, whatever, they do need access and they need to be have a turnaround. So I understand that, and I'm perfectly willing to do that. Like I said, I just wanted to do something more minimal to save the banks, because like I said, we're trying to keep people out of there, and there are quite a few thieves in the area. So if you make a big, I see the way I see it, if I make a big 50-foot turnaround in a cul-de-sac and take away those banks, they might find a way to drive around. And we're just trying to keep people out of the property.
And I have on the screen some of the pictures that I've been providing. You see the amount of people that's coming back on this dead end road. It's a lot.
You can see there's two pictures of one of the thieves we caught. He took 28 items one night coming in and out of our property and putting it in his car and going off. We've called, you know, the Hamilton County Police Department 4 times to come out there. Once we put cameras up, we've tried everything over the last 2-3 years. And the cameras have done the best because now we can see what they're doing and who's coming. But it's just been awful to try to keep people out.
Hey, Brian, if you'll show that overall map, I was just curious how many properties that serves.
Takes a while. We want to
Okay.
these pictures here.
Well,
Mr.
let me-
Highlander, were you going to say something?
Yes, sir. If I might.
Go ahead.
This is in my commission district, and she called me and explained some of the situation, and she is in an untenable situation. I mean, it is really rough. She said all kinds of problems, and a full cul-de-sac would make it easier for miscreants, shall we say, to get in and out. And I think a minimum turnaround, I think, would be appropriate, but I'll yield to the engineer.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lehman's point, I believe this road was one of those roads. It's a private road that back in the day the county accepted. It's on the road.
I was only going to make the comment that if there were 3 or 4 or 5 individuals and they wanted to abandon the entire road, I think we could consider that at some point in the future. But that would have to be an application by the private property owners along the road, just like you've submitted. Let me offer because I agree with everything. It's just when we deal with public roads and appropriate turnarounds, it's just not my opinion, and it's not just a few opinions. We deal with emergency access, we deal with fire marshal, we deal with quite a few different types of jurisdictions, sheriff's office. So what I'd like to do, and I'll make a motion to approve with conditions, and then I'll just make a comment to you that we'll look at it one more time relative to appropriateness of a turnaround, taking into Dr. Hollander's comment, and then prior to county commission have the same discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and it has been seconded.
Mr.
Any
Chairman.
discussion? Mr.
Sorry.
Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess quick question for the applicant. So right now it is just a dead end. There is no turnaround other than that L. So there's not a cul-de-sac.
And that's the way it's been for 30 years.
And this may be best for staff or maybe Mr. Lehman, is that something the county takes into account in terms of, they're not changing the situation in terms of turnaround access on that road?
Let me answer it one way. Obviously, when someone changes a public road or makes an improvement, that there are certain standards that are applicable now that maybe weren't applicable 40 years ago or 50 years ago or 60 years ago. There's also now, a fire code. There's a bunch of other types of regulations and restrictions that anybody sees if you take an old structure or an old property and you try to bring it up. So I'll only offer that I think we can look at it from that perspective. But anytime somebody takes a road, just like if a developer wanted to build on this road, he'd have to make some improvements, even though it's been in this current condition. So we can look at that. But I do want to make sure that we talk to all pertinent parties to make sure we've got something that's adequate.
Thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Holland.
Mr. Lehman, just having some experience and to help the applicant, maybe a hammerhead type turnaround is more appropriate with the volume and meets the need with less cost to the applicant. So just trying to.
No, and I to your point, we'll look at it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't looked at it, but so I would only offer let's keep a condition, understanding that there needs to be some type of turnaround, and then we can have the discussion once again at county commission.
Mr. Maybe.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Lehman's comments there, and I'll say I will vote to support that because I feel comfortable that the county will work with you between now and the county commission meeting to find something that's working for you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question for staff.
Go ahead.
Can you go back to the property map? I'm somewhat confused on what right of way is actually being abandoned. Is
This section right here.
It doesn't appear that road has any right of way leading up to that section. Is it?
It's right.
Isolated
It's
right of way?
It's one of those old private roads back in the day.
Well,
Todd can answer better than I can.
Well, it's implied. Let me say this. So when roads are accepted, and if this one was truly accepted, probably wasn't accepted through our private roads program because we did require dedication right away. But there's a whole lot of roads in the county that have been taken by the public over, hundreds of years, or at least 100 years plus, that don't have dedicated right of way relative to the property. But if it's a public road that's been accepted by the Hamilton County Board of Commissioners, the county has both an obligation and a responsibility. But we can operate and maintain those roads in their current condition. So to the point of going off the existing road or improving the right of way, we don't have any jurisdictional authority for that, but we can maintain the operation of the road. And so it gets into a little bit of a situation with her that she probably is going to have to create something there on her property as an appropriate turnaround. So there's a dedicated property right of way, and there's also an implied. That's the other reason why the subdivision regulations now require that if you subdivide property, you dedicate right of way, because a lot of the properties that are subdivided out in the county do not have dedicated right of way. So it's a process, ongoing process, but there is an implied there is an implied operation and maintenance area on any public road.
And Burton Road was accepted by the county commission on October 20th, 1993 by resolution 109336A. So it was
Thank you.
accepted.
Thank you, Brian. That was after our private roads
Is that
program.
91 or?
88 was the
88.
private roads program, but one of those were sign off and dedication right away. So it may have been after the fact. It may have been dropped and the county commission may have brought it forward and approved it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case is 2024-0137. This is item 8 on our agenda. It is located at 852 Pickett Gulf Road, and staff is recommended to approve a special permit for a single-wide manufactured home. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have 2 text amendment and resolutions in front of us here. Item 1 on our agenda, Mr. Schultz.
Yes, normally we bring this to you a month before as a briefing. We need to get these moved pretty quickly from the direction of the county. So first one is an ADU ordinance, similar to what we did in the city of Chattanooga. It's basically the same language that modified for the county. I won't go into what ADU is and the intent behind it. Basically, we're allowing ADUs anywhere in the county in any zone where single-family detached dwellings are permitted use. Have to have public sewer available to those lots, and it's not allowed in the A1 zones. At the end of the day, that's what the recommendation would be. So the ADUs are not permitted in A1 agriculture district. They shall not be permitted on lots served by individual septic tanks, and ADUs will only be permitted for residential lots served by public sanitary sewer. Same standards as the city of Chattanooga, 800 square foot. Same dimensional standards. Lot has to meet the current lot size of the underlying zone. This is an attempt to get affordable housing units in the Hamilton County.
I think it's fantastic. What's the will of the commission?
Chairman, I'll second. I want to congratulate the county for following the city's lead on this.
Well, Nathan Janeway, who heads up our development services, we like the city to do good stuff, and then we'll come right behind and
See if it works.
yeah, we take the good ideas. But thank you for your support. Nathan and his department worked hard along with the RPA. So thank you, Dan.
Yes, please. Do we already have a motion? And we have a second. Thank you.
Nathan Janeway, 1250 Market Street. I just want to make a couple of comments in relation to this. We took a thoughtful approach to this by putting it only on sewer and not in A1 districts. Really, we're just trying to give as many options as possible. Through this area planning process, we've discovered that, certain parts of the county, we have inadequate infrastructure, and we're trying to sort of maximize the areas that we do have the infrastructure and minimize the detriment to the areas that don't. And I feel like this is a really good way to do that.
Yes.
Nathan, let's talk after this. I think at the city, we're happy with the result of the ADU ordinance, but we haven't had as many applicants as we would like. And I think there's a public education piece that's maybe missing that the city and county could do together with all of our builders in Hamilton County. It's a wonderful tool to create affordable housing units for, maybe it's an elderly relative who needs to live nearby you. Maybe it's, an adult child who's not able to purchase a home yet but wants to live close. It's really wonderful. I'd love to work with you on getting the word out.
And currently in the county, you can do 2 units, but in order to do 2 units on one lot, you have to have a lot that's big enough to be able to be subdivided. So it makes it difficult for people to subdivide or put 2 units on one lot.
Mr. Chairman, I just give a little warning about those units for adult children.
Mr. Lyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think here we are again with a really important thing and a room completely devoid of the general public to witness it. I think this is a big thing for Hamilton County to do, and I think Mr. Anderson's absolutely correct. But in addition to the builders, and I think there's an education that we need to do to the general public as to what the face of housing affordability, what the crisis really looks like, because it's also a workforce issue. I mean, if you look at the rising, I think, Nicole Heyman just came to our AIA Tennessee conference on architecture in Knoxville this past Friday, and led a great roundtable discussion. And some of the information that she's gathered about where the rising area median income is going, the housing affordability crisis is school teachers and firefighters and police officers and a huge number of our community. It's not just, I think there's a traditional, I think there's a lot of people out there who misconstrue where the line, the threshold of housing affordability starts. And I think every single tool we can put in the toolbox is going to help, and is eventually going to get us into starting to crack this nut by chipping away at it one little thing at a time. And yeah, I think congratulations to the county for this, and it is an honor to vote for it.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we have a resolution to, what's item 2 on our agenda? It's to amend the Hamilton County zoning regulations.
Sure. This is also following up on the land use plans. One of the things we've heard through the planning process is a need for a park zone, a resort zone, recreational zone in the county. We just simply don't have that. So this is our first direction at creating this zone. It's called a Parks and Recreation District regulation to provide outdoor recreation park uses and accessory uses. So that's the intent behind this zone. You see on the screen, the permitted uses are agriculture uses, agritourism. That's a big buzzword that's being thrown around nowadays. So it's campgrounds, community centers, conservation areas, golf course, greenhouse, non-commercial greenhouses, public parks, recreational type uses, stables, group gatherings such as weddings, reunions, business meetings, receptions, classes, and other type services. That's permitted by right. We also added in some accessory uses to this zone, such as mobile food units, retail goods establishment, eating and drinking establishments such as restaurants, and buildings and structures that you normally see as part of recreation, like a pavilion, that type of facility, or for our picnic tables. We also prohibited certain uses in this zone, such as flea markets, fast food restaurants with drive-throughs, adult-oriented establishments, commercial dairies and poultry farms. Commercial kennels would be prohibited, and private recreational centers or uses would be prohibited. So this is truly meant to be a true public recreational zone. We created not individual lot sizes for uses within this zone, but to have this zone itself, you have to have a minimum of 50 acres. And I believe this is the minimum size of Chester Frost. So like a Chester Frost would come in and rezone Chester Frost to this type zone. We have a maximum building coverage of 20%. We increased the maximum building height to 50 foot. Right now it's 2.5 stories to 35 feet. We upped that to 50 feet. Setbacks would apply to the buildings only. You have a front setback of 25 foot, side and rear of 25 foot, because these are going to ideally be large lots who have a need for a big setback. One of the things that's in this Parks and Recreational District is a special permit by the Planning Commission that we see quite often. There's a special permit for amusement resorts, whether that's permanent or temporary. We have both those classified in the county. Those are things such as concerts, fairs, racing events, or anything staged for entertainment. So that would be allowed in this zone by special permit that would come before this body for your approval. There's also special permits issued by the county commission that we place in this zone, that being bed and breakfast, cemeteries and mausoleums, cell towers, recreational marinas. And finally, number E is something new that we're adding. It's a rural retreat, subject to section 4, section whatever that number is. That goes before the county commission. The intent of this rural retreat is to allow and encourage resorts, such as hotels, a conference center, something that you'd see like at a state park. This type of facility is what we're trying to create here. So the primary uses in this rural retreat would be a resort, would be a hotel or a conference center or event center. It also would have associated recreational uses such as swimming pools and related facilities, boating facilities, tennis courts, basketball courts, zip lines, golf courses, any of those associated uses you would see with a resort facility, similar to a state park. So you could also do banquets, conferences, weddings, reunions as associated use with this hotel or conference. So Because with that, you have to submit a site plan, a very basic site plan with for any type of rezoning that's required, so we can see what the proposed use is. Road access, you shall have adequate road access reviewed and be approved by the Hamilton County Fire Marshal and Hamilton County Engineering. Setbacks, we have 200 feet from all property lines. Again, this is ideally going to be a 50 acre site. So you have 200 feet setback to protect some of those adjacent residential uses. Off-street parking shall be provided on the same lot or adjacent to the buildings on the site. We have, and that's it. I'll answer any questions you have. Nathan, I think they wants to add something to it, but this is something we've seen through the land use planning process, that we need this type of zone. You're going to start seeing more of these things coming from us as staff to just modernize and update the county zoning code, coming out of the plan recommendations of Hamilton County.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really, what we've seen a lot in the county over probably the past 20 years is that, we were a big ag county back in the day, a lot of small family farms on, large parcels. And they're beautiful pieces of property. A lot of them are just fields, and then a lot of them have really nice mountains and lake access on them. So really the justification for this is that, typically right now, the only way for a family to monetize those old farms, because the kids and grandkids don't want to farm anymore. And so the only way for them to monetize those old farms is to sell it to a developer, and they put 700, 800 homes on it. This really gives the public an option to monetize those farms while preserving the character of the farm. So you have a large parcel, and you can start to do either resort types of uses or tourism types of uses that are, somewhat subdued in nature. But it gives you enough options in this, and different stages of options to be able to monetize those farms without turning it into a residential subdivision. And really, in many parts of our county, the infrastructure is not there to have a residential subdivision anyway. And so this provides a quicker ladder for those families to be able to profit off of their land without just having one option. Also, in addition to that, the county owns quite a few parcels of land, and our Parks and Rec department has seen increased opportunities to monetize and provide recreation activities on those parcels for the public. And instead of spot zoning up those parcels into several different things, this gives us an opportunity to rezone our parks into a zone that is very clear to the public exactly what we plan to do with the land. Just gives a very clear focus for what we're trying to do. So we feel like this is a really good addition to Hamilton County zoning code.
Thank you. Commissioner Highlander.
Thank you, Nathan. I certainly appreciate your body of work on this, and I can see a lot. How much difficulty would there be, say, a family wanted to impose this type of situation and then come back 20, 30 years from now, and they would have the opportunity to rezone it, say R1 or whatever,
Sure.
at a future date?
Sure.
It's not permanent.
No. This is like any zone in Hamilton County. They could do this for 30 years and then decide they don't want to do recreation anymore, and then turn it into a subdivision if they wanted to.
Okay. So I think it's a great idea. It should bring a lot of revenue into the county.
I'd entertain a motion. We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Lau?
Oh, one question. The 50-acre threshold.
Yes, sir.
Just curious, where did the conversation drive the kind of barrier to entry?
Sort of our ideal representation of this would be like a Fall Creek Falls State Park. That was sort of the vision. That would be sort of like a maximum build out. One of our largest parks is Chester Frost, and we feel like, down the road, 10 years, Chester Frost could turn into something closer to a Fall Creek Falls State Park with those types of amenities. So that's sort of what we went off of. We also have looked through the land use plans that we're working on, some of the larger parcels that exist up Highway 58 towards the north of the county in Birchwood. A lot of those are 50 acres and larger. So we just, we felt like that was appropriate for this type of use. Anything smaller than that, you put a hotel on 20 acres or something like that, sometimes that, you're sort of getting to that edge where it may not be appropriate in the middle of a rural community, whereas 50 acres, you could move the hotel or the campground or whatever off the sides of the property, and then it's really not a nuisance to the neighborhood surrounding it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Nathan. You have staff updates?
Just say no.
We're going to try to give a staff update for the rest of the year after at the end of the meeting.
And I'm standing here, so I'll have my back to you all. So there's about 6 slides that we'll go through about projects we're working on. And then there's several things that have kind of triggers or actions for planning commissions. I have a summary slide at the end that kind of puts them all together. And we have dates for some, and then we have pending dates for others. So zoning ordinance implementation. As you know, the zoning ordinance was approved by Chattanooga City Council with a 120-day effective date. That puts us, I think it's November 20th. And so we've been very busy on a variety of things, particularly focused on the equivalency mapping. And just to give you a little of we're spending a lot of time on it because R4, for example, R4, UGC, and C3 are they all have a lot of conditions on them. So our approach has been to pull every single zoning ordinance, and we're looking at all of them on a case-by-case basis just to make sure that we are, in fact, giving it the most equivalent zone. So it's taking a little bit longer, but we want to make sure we get that right. We do have a review of the proposed design standards. This was mentioned to you all at the work session at the end of June. We are hoping to get the results of that in the next few days. And then we also said that we would come back and have a work session with Planning Commission about that first round of changes, which might overlap with the effective date or right after that. So we're thinking the September Planning Commission meeting, we have I think I pulled the numbers here. For September Planning Commission, we only have 6 zoning cases and 5 mandatory referrals. So we're thinking next month after the Planning Commission meeting, recess into a work session so we don't have to have another special called meeting. And then we could just go into the work session on the zoning changes in the map. We also are doing an Ask a Planner, and when I sent something out, realized it might imply we're not available all the time. We as staff are always available at RPA at Chattanooga.gov, or rezoning at Chattanooga.gov. You can call anytime just to make sure that if you really wanted to dig down on the new zoning ordinance, if someone was available and not in a meeting. We're doing the Ask a Planner 2 times a week. And Brian or Emily or Darren or I will be there in some combination to just talk through any questions. We too are learning the ordinance, but anyone can call. And Brian and I are in the office all the time also. We're also coordinating with LDOs. We got a lot of direction from council to make sure that the implementation heading towards enforcement and permitting was smooth. So we've had quite a few one-on-one trainings. We're helping with some of the online forms that LDO uses. And that's something we're going to continue to work on. But that is zoning ordinance implementation. We'll have new cases starting next month at Planning Commission. So if anyone has a question, we do want to talk to folks. So if you could direct folks to us, that'll help us also figure out what's working or not working. The mapping, as I said, is a big deal. And that just takes a lot of work to make sure that we're getting that right. We have been holding meetings with council members just to make sure that we're prepped for any questions they may have. We are mostly done with equivalent. We had a draft equivalent table, but changes were done through the process. So we've had to revisit the equivalency table. And then we're looking at those zones that cover that really wide range of uses and have had so many conditions. So I think we have maybe 200 more properties on those to look at. And we're trying to do a really good job of documentation. So if this was my zone and this is my new zone, hopefully it's really clear. There's kind of the more equivalent one for one. There's some that are, this zone might be these others, and then a few we're going to just really, we're trying to say in a table, this is why we're doing this. So you could look up your address and hopefully it's really clear to you the decision made. We would want feedback from property owners on that. So we're doing online and in person. The online is going to be it's called a story map, or kind of explain what we're doing. You can type in your address and be able to see your current kind of historic zoning and then the proposed new equivalent zone. Not everyone is going to want to go to a website and type it in. So we're doing some in-person. We're starting with the City of Chattanooga Neighborhood Roundtable meeting at the end of August. That'll also help us understand when we talk about the equivalent map, like what's translating well to someone understanding that, and where we need to be a little more clear on what's actually going on. This is not the full rezoning where everyone necessarily would show up at Planning Commission because there's such a difference of uses. So we're trying to help people understand this is creating the new zoning map to match up with the new zoning code. Yes. We've identified that explaining what we're doing is probably the most important thing. It's not necessarily just renaming because, someone needs to be aware there are dimensional changes, but we're picking the most similar zone that we think is out there. I think on so one of the things that council asked was a really clear, frequently asked question handout for the R1. So because that's the vast majority of residential properties, of course, in the city are R1. So I was R1. Now I'm one of these new R1s. What does that mean? So I think in this kind of the online and all that, we want to really kind of convey that clearly. Like what is different? Use is not very different. Your dimension, your lot size, your setback might be a little different. I think we've talked about where we probably need to make sure we hear from people is your in R4, and you have lots of conditions, and we're proposing this most equivalent zone based on our analysis, and you have a question. Like there are a few out there, and so those are ones that we would expect to hear more from people. That we should have already talked to hopefully a lot of those people before it comes to Planning Commission, because our intention is for it to be equivalent. So I think it'd be hopefully mostly asking questions. I think the roundtable at the end of August will give us a little bit of an idea and hopefully help us refine our message. And it could be you use that message in part to explain what we're doing and then see if it makes sense to people and they're processing what we're thinking we're communicating. So we talked about that as having the handouts for them to look at. Is that something that they understand? So we are trying to, I think there will always be people questioning it, but we're trying to get ahead of most of that as possible. One thing I must say, this is a little bit of an aside, presenting to the Engineers Association meeting tomorrow. The engineers have an annual conference. Not my section.
I cannot imagine anything worse.
But
thank you for doing that for us.
Well, I think part of what I would like to do at that meeting is to have folks, if you were an engineer involved in development, if you could reach out to the people you have as clients or help through the rezoning process, if you could have them follow up with us or just make sure, it would be helpful to kind of like amplify the message, because we have a lot of people we see that regularly through this process. If they could help us a little bit by pushing that message out. And then so right now we have the Planning Commission work session scheduled for September, and then the map is scheduled for the October Planning Commission agenda. So that is one, we'll talk about it in September. We can do additional work, but right now we're scheduled for October. Yes. Mm-hmm.
nonprofit work, whatever.
If I could just say, we did a video when we started the planning process, and don't want to brag, but we won a Silver Telly Award about 2 months ago, and you can come by and hold it if you like to in our office. People don't know what a Silver or Telly Award is, but it's an actual big deal. If you're communications, we submitted it just because I thought it would be fun to see if we won, and we actually did pretty well. Having said that, we have a communications firm in town called Humanot, which I'm spending 2 hours with later this week to talk about zoning, to do a video. So we'll do whatever we can, but I think we're just, I appreciate you saying the engineering thing may be boring. I tend to think zoning's boring. I think what's more interesting is development and livable communities and walkable places and fancy places to eat a lunch. But trying to make it informative and help people understand, because I think there's just as much concern with folks worry, unnecessarily about the zoning ordinance update. So we definitely want to get it right. And so I appreciate your comments.
Yeah. We can do, it's a great idea. We have we've done where you can basically film a Zoom. For us, it's easier to kind of film a Zoom and say, what are we doing here? But I think probably the message of what is my role as a property owner, or resident, or business owner, or in this, what is my role in this process? Like, what do you want from me? And maybe we just need to be really clear. There's 3 things. You should, check the zoning around you, ask questions, and then let us know if, or something. But yes, I think that's good. And we have very great graphics and technology staff, so they can figure something wonderful out. That's great. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Karen,
That's great.
I've got one question in regards to the October Planning Commission agenda,
Yes.
where the map comes
Yes.
before us. So I just have this sneaky suspicion that y'all are going to put an entire map behind us, and we're going to ask if there's any opposition, and 12 hands are going to go up, and those 12 hands are going to have some sort of issue with what y'all have done on the mapping side. Maybe that's a developer who doesn't think that they've been mapped appropriately. Maybe it's a property owner. How are we going to then handle that?
So we kind of brainstormed some of this too, because of I think when we did form-based code, it was like a 5-hour meeting of everyone who had a C3 to form-based code. We went through every single one of those. And so, and then we've got a different scale here. I think we're going to try to get a pulse as we're going along that August 26th meeting with a lot of the representatives from neighborhoods in the city. Will give us an idea of where we're at. We'll start to push out information, talk to groups. I think we'll start to get a feel for what is our level of interest, perhaps is the word. And so,
will we be able to pass that? Will we be able to pass that agenda minus this parcel? Let's just say there's 15 hands.
Yeah.
And that 15 hands is going to be 15 hours of work that really needs to happen between RPA staff and the property owner, ideally not here. Will we be able to pass that map with the exception of these addresses, and those all remain
so we are
following month or defer?
We will, yes. So one possibility, and we're meeting with Phil Noblet, the city attorney, to make sure we've got everything buttoned up. We can ask that with him. The intention is to phase out the old zoning map, that we're going to place in time, all the city cases, rezoning cases are closed. That is the historic map. And now we have the new map. So carrying over zones that really no longer exist are something we need to think about. But at the September meeting, we can come with, here's how that meeting could look. And it could be that you are on a, I don't know what the solution be, but we can come to that meeting with, if someone comes to, and Planning Commission wants to make a motion or pull something out, what is happening with that property?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, again, I think we've said this for the last year, this is absolutely a mapping of your existing zoning district. Nobody's zoning district is going to change in a legal way in any fashion on that map. And if somebody comes, they can come back a year later and say, I didn't like the way it was. And then, you know what? I'm pretty sure we will fix it. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of opposition. I think it's absolutely what we are doing to make sure every property is legal in this city. And that's what we're doing. There's no reason that somebody's going to walk away unless they're looking for something completely unreasonable. I want my property to be zoned a mall, and it's not zoned commercial. So, I mean, I want to just be clear that we are not upzoning down. We are giving somebody exactly the equivalent zoning with a different district. I just want to make sure, and it's absolutely the intention of city and the RPA to make sure it is a legal zoning that we give folks. Now, that's not to say somebody can't oppose it, but that's absolutely the intention, is make people whole.
And it's September, we can have a strategy and
We
present
believe
that.
you, but the general public does not have high trust.
Understand, but I would say there's also the law on our side.
Sure.
You know, again, we are working within the confines of the law, and absolutely there's opinion, but there's absolutely the intention to make sure that every property owner has existing equivalents.
So we'll have an idea of scale a little bit by the September meeting. And then it's possible too that we have a strategy if someone comes up and says, I don't know if I'm in opposition, I'm here to ask a question, that we have staff that could talk to them out in the lobby and maybe get them out of the opposition and kind of explain a little bit of what Dan was talking about there.
In September's Planning Commission, you'll all the cases in the city will be for the new zones.
Yeah.
So you'll start seeing those next month.
Okay, so we've got a few more things going on.
Not all of them.
Not the county will still be the same, but in the city, all new zoning applications will be for the new zones.
Well, I know that we're an applicant on one of them, and we're in the old zones.
Yeah. Sorry, October.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed out.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, it's August, October. The previous schedule would have been September.
Gotcha.
I will move on to Plan Chattanooga, but we know that there's kind of an unknown at this point about amount of interest, I guess, or just a number of questions or number of people that might come to Planning Commission. So I think would be open to that as another special called meeting. So we will get a feel for that as we're moving along. Plan Chattanooga, we have re-reviewed as staff the first round of Plan Chattanooga documents in the map. We're getting the an updated documents for all those that we're sharing with other departments, city departments. We're also talking about that at the neighborhood roundtable. And then public outreach will be later this summer into fall. So we don't have, we're not anticipating having that before you sometime until early next year. So Plan Chattanooga is sitting out there, but it's behind the zoning, the map. So that's just an update on that, and we'll let you know as we move along. Plan Hamilton is in front. I should have actually done these consecutively, I guess. Plan Hamilton is a little bit ahead of that. So we have the draft plan and place types are close to completion. Working on coordinating with Hamilton County Commissioners. We don't have a complete game plan for public outreach yet, but this is slated for November Planning Commission to be on the agenda for November Planning Commission.
And we may need a work session on that in October.
Yes. And that's kind of on the to be determined on the list of all the activities coming up in a few slides from now. So yes, the idea of going through the plan recommendations, the place type maps, and then just seeing what questions you do. Because we've got a lot going on. So if we're having a special called work session, we want to make sure we're getting the most out of it by covering as much as possible.
I've got a couple questions. For the Plan Hamilton, Plan Chattanooga, I'm a little concerned about this schedule. We're in August now, and we're working on a public outreach plan, and it's supposed to be on our agenda in November. Plan Hamilton. It says working on public outreach plan, and it's on the agenda for November. That seems like a pretty tight turnaround. And then Plan Chattanooga didn't seem too much different in that we'll have the draft plan, we'll do public outreach, and then I think it said spring adoption. That's a little bit more time, which is good, but this just seems very tight.
There is a political will to wrap up Plan Hamilton. And the commissioners of the outlying areas feel like we've had, and Commissioner Highlander can speak to this, but they feel like we've had really good public outreach over the process. The only piece that's missing right now is having that final kind of overlay map showing, what the density ranges might be in given areas, just to inform the public of what will be suggested. And we plan to have a meeting in each one of those outlying areas to show those maps when they're done, and show the plan document. And as far as I'm aware, the commissioners of those areas feel comfortable with that level of public outreach.
Yes, perhaps we're working on implementing the planning outreach plan would be better. Sorry. But yes, thank you for the question. Some other pending items were items that have come up from planning commissioners, either at meetings or just through communication. So I don't want those to drop. One of them was the parking minimums. And this is thinking about really parking provisions citywide. Multiple partners are involved in that. So we're just kind of starting to talk about that. Some more information to come, but I know that we made a commitment to following up on something. So that's to say it hasn't dropped. It's just that we've kind of moving some other things forward quickly. So that's still on the list. We had a question about timing of preliminary and final plats. We had discussed this. If you've been on Planning Commission, we discussed this in great detail. In 2021, Ron's conducting a peer review from other Tennessee cities. That's just for information, and is updating that memo and to get back to you for information, and then whatever Planning Commission I think wants to do from there. But just to say that was a question that came up again. We're updating what we know, and then we'll pass that along. And that, Brian, you thinking next month maybe?
Yeah, I've already reached out to 6 or 7 cities in the state. Just to give you a brief update. It's pretty much in line what we do now. There's no change. If somebody knows a different city that does allow preliminary and final plats, please let me know, because the ones I reached out to today, it's pretty much in line what we do now. So.
But do you think the development community understands that, like what we did today with Mike Price's final plat was that subdivision's not built?
It's not. That is different. That is a different thing we do here that the other cities don't do.
And I don't think, I've gotten so many developers reach out to me, and Dan was in a meeting recently where they were talking about the challenges in regards to the final plat. And I kept saying, you can have a final plat approved now, subject to all of these conditions.
But we're the only one that does that.
It isn't going to be recorded until you've got all these signatures on it. I don't think the development community knows that you can. I've been telling them, but they don't seem. And I think that's the line. That's the lion's share of the issue is the amount of time it takes on a final plat. But we did it today.
Because right now, most places, you either build all the infrastructure, then you bring that final plat to the planning commission and get approved. And it can be signed this afternoon, or you have a bond or a letter of credit. We do it a little bit different in that you can bring the final plat, like Mike's plat. The opposition sees no roads constructed, and she's questioning why is it in front of this body. Well, we've allowed that to happen for many, many years here. Now, again, other places don't do it that way. So it's something to think about when I bring this stuff back. How we want to handle that.
But your opinion, we're not violating state law in doing that. Okay, thank you.
No, I don't think
I don't know if we're violating, but it's. You can read it how you want to read it, I guess. I'll bring it to you next
we're happy to look into that. I don't think we're violating any. I think the reason that that public agencies don't do that is because there's a concern that somebody's going to buy a parcel of land. A road's never going to be put in. I've seen this, where somebody came to me and said, "I bought a piece of land. I can't get access to it."
But it's not recorded, you can't convey the land, and it would be illegal.
Yeah.
But you can. I've seen things illegally recorded. How about that? And then sold property, and then somebody ends up sad. There's no way for the public agency to go back and recoup it. I mean, they're illegally filed, you're right.
And I will say, it makes opposition, like the lady spoke today, wondering, why is it on the planning commission for final approval? She doesn't know. It won't get signed till all that stuff's put into place. All of her concerns are valid, but it won't get signed. Even though it's approved with this body today, nobody in the county staff will sign it. But it could be a day that somebody comes to us and say, hey, your planning commission approved this final plan. I want it signed. This body approved it. It's approved. It's approved with this body. It comes vested. It's something to think about.
So anyways, we had a question about that. So we just wanted to, for planning commission to know that we were following up on that request. And then at the work session on the zoning code at the end of June, we talked about a memo received by an outside group that reviews zoning and gives suggestions and insight. So that's also something that we know is probably could be a part of that first quarter review. So also it hasn't dropped, just keeping it on the to-do list. So summary right now, we've got the September Planning Commission meeting followed by the work session. We'll just recess to the work session. October Planning Commission, the new equivalent zoning map. These might change or add on something depending on how that's looking. Dan talked about the tentative work session on Plan Hamilton. So I know you all are busy, so we just need to watch the number of meetings and when, because there's a lot packed into really this next few months. We've got November Planning Commission. The date of our regularly scheduled Planning Commission is Veterans Day, which is a county holiday as of this year, I think, for the first time. And so courthouse is closed. So we need to consider moving that date to November 18th. The DRC is also closed. The city is closed. So just having security, staffing, people to live stream, we're running into those problems. So we're going to check if the if the county commission room is available on the 18th. But we will send out a email after this to say, are you all available on the 18th? But right now, I think that's is going to be the best option. And it's only because of the courthouse. We had the problem last year, the year before. The city was closed, but the county wasn't, so we still had the meeting. So anyways.
Yeah, we was able to meet last year because it's.
Yeah. And then Plan Hamilton pops up on the agenda for action. So I can send you all this in an email, double check the November 18th date, but we're very aware that you all are a volunteer board. And that we need to be very deliberate about when we're scheduling meetings or extra meetings. So that's why the following up with the work session next month actually held pretty well. And then just other department initiatives. We are doing other things just to let you know if anything on here is something you'd want to know more about. And this is the last slide. We're doing a retreat with Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis planning staff, just talking about everything that's going on. Dan's leading that effort to pull us all together. The Civic District today, just participating in that, and also the CHA Westside CNI implementation. We have a Reconnecting Communities grant. The plan, this is a federal discretionary grant to connect downtown to Westside. Is a project the planning agency is working on. Brian's group is working on an update to the City of Chattanooga sign code, which does not come to Planning Commission, but is a project that they are working on with administration and LDO, just as an FYI. We're also working on the passenger rail study in partnership with administration. And then updating the county sign regulations. That's late fall based on everything that's coming up here. We might probably should push that out.
That's the subdivision regulations. We got a draft. It's probably 80% done, working with Nathan's team to finalize some of the street standards and stormwater standards and doing some public outreach on that. But draft's pretty 80% done.
But that one, so probably thinking about timing on that one and everything you have to review, particularly since subdivision regulations stop with Planning Commission. So we might revisit that scheduling. But that is it. We are in a very busy time, and we do want to make sure that we are getting our public meetings done, doing our outreach, communicating with everyone involved. So any recommendations on how we can continue to do that or improve it is great. Otherwise, we'll share a tentative schedule with you and double check on the November 18th Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions? All right. Mr. Anderson?
Just a comment. Thank you, Karen, Dan, Brian, everybody in RPA who spoke today and who works every day. You guys don't have the luxury of seeing it in action most days like I do. And I will tell you, there's more going on in this department than I've ever seen in my career. And they're doing phenomenal stuff for the city and the county. And we're really fortunate to have your whole team.
Thank you for the comments.
We do have a time on our agenda for public comment on non-agenda items, and there's nobody here, so I'm assuming there are none. Does Planning Commission have anything? All right, can I get approval of the Planning Commission minutes of July 8th, 2024? And the special call Planning Commission meeting?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have the special call minutes for June 27th
Okay,
ready, so
thank you.
you can approve them, I guess, if you want to, but don't have them.
So we had a motion to approve. Was there any second on the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Maybe. And any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And, oh, there you go. You filled in for Mr. Payne. Thank you. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, sir.